Hey everyone, today we're going to be talking about independent and dependent variables. And this is actually kind of a science topic. So could pretend that I'm Mr. Saucedo and I'm teaching you a science lesson today where we are going to be talking about how independent and dependent variables can look on a graph and how they can look on the coordinate plane. So an independent variable is an x variable. So an independent is always on our x. And an independent, I like to think of like the independent, strong person that you can change no matter what. The dependent is our y variable, and our y always depends on x. Let's write that down. Y depends on x. Ooh, sorry. So let me give you an example. Y depends on x. My example would be, let's say, the amount of time I study for a test, amount of time I study for a test, the amount of time I study. So that would be my independent. Like I can change, I'm going to study for an hour. I'm going to study for 30 minutes. I'm going to study for a week. The amount of time I study and my dependent would be my test score. So do you see how my y variable depends on my x variable? So if I study a lot, I'm probably going to get a higher test score. But if I don't study at all, do no studying, my test score is going to be lower. So my independent impacts my dependent. My y depends on what happens with x. My test score depends on my x. So my independent is x all the time. My dependent is my y. So let me show you what this would look like in a table. Okay, so in this problem, Teresa, which is my mother-in-law's name, I picked that because she is coming to visit us. Teresa is buying glitter markers to put in gift bags. The table shows the relationship between the number of gift bags and the number of glitter markers she needs to buy, right? Because if you didn't have any bags, you're not going to have to buy any glitter markers. But if you decide to make, 50 bags, you're going to need a lot of glitter markers because they're going to run out. So here's our table. If I had 0 bags, I need 0 markers. If I need 1, I'm going to need 5 glitter markers. If I have 2 bags, I'm going to need 10. And if I have 3 bags, I'm going to need 15 glitter markers. Okay? So, right, because she's putting them in the gift bags. I apologize. She's putting these markers in the gift bags to give to people. So if she makes 50 bags, she's going to need a lot of glitter markers to put in those bags. So my independent is always x. My dependent is always y. Well, conveniently for us, the x is usually on top, the y is usually on bottom. So we can tell right away without even thinking about it that our independent is going to be our number of bags and our dependent is going to be the markers. And that makes sense. The number of markers I need depends on the number of gift bags that I get. See how that works? Y depends on x. Y is the dependent, x is the independent. Okay? So I want you to pause the video and I want you to read this next question and see if you can figure out what's the independent and what's the dependent. Pause the video. Okay, in this one, it didn't tell us which the time or the cost was x or y, but because the time is on top, usually that's our x, the bottom one is y. Okay, so our x is always our independent, our y is always our dependent. So x is going to be our time, and y, our dependent, is going to be the cost that it takes. And that makes sense, right? If I just rent the boat, but I don't go out at all, it's going to cost me $10. But if I go out for an hour, well, then it's going to cost me $11 because it's $1 more per hour. Does that make sense? The x and the y, time, cost, dependent, independent. Okay, on this next one, you're going to actually have to fill in the table and then determine which one's the independent and dependent. So it says a car travels at a constant rate of 60 miles per hour. Fill out the table, tell me what the independent and dependent are. Pause your video. Okay, check with me, did your table look like this? If we don't travel at all, we have no distance. No time, no distance. If we travel 1 hour, we're going to go 60 miles. 2 hours, 120. 3, 180. So our independent is always our x, so that's time. Our dependent is always our y, so that's our distance here. Okay, so that's kind of how tables work. I do want to just mention that sometimes you are going to see a table like this, x and y. Instead of going horizontally, it'll go vertically, but it means the same thing. Nothing different, just know the left side is x, the right side is y. Okay, you're also going to have to be able to look at a graph and tell me what the independent or dependent are. So we just talked about this yesterday. The x is horizontal, the y is vertical. The x goes left to right, the y goes up and down. So now if you can just find your x and your y, you know you're independent and you're dependent without even reading the problem. But in this problem, it said Samantha, but then it has Lisa. Samantha's ordering raffle tickets, and then here are her ticket orders. So our independent is our x, which are our tickets, and our dependent is the total cost, which makes sense because if you sell more tickets, it's going to cost more. If you sell more tickets, it's going to cost more. If you sell less tickets, it's not going to cost as much. So we have our independent and our dependent, our x and our y. So will you flip it over to the other side? And I want you to go ahead and I want you to try these two. The one about, I think it's number 5 and 6 on the back, 5 and 6. Go ahead and do 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, 5, 6, 7, 8. And pause your video and then check with me here in a second. Okay, for this number 5, I got that the independent is our x, the months. Our dependent is the amount owed. For the next one, you actually have to be careful because it says what is the dependent. So x and y are dependent is the time. X is horizontal, y is vertical. And then it says, why does the graph begin at x equals 1? And so what I was thinking is it's lapse, right? And then time. So with our lapse, well, if we don't go a full lap, you can't do a half a lap. That's not going to work. And also, like if we don't start driving at all, then we're not going to have anything on the graph. So that's why it begins at x equals 1. Okay, I want you to read this next one. Try it yourself, pause the video, and then I will come back and give you a hint. But try it first by yourself. Okay, so this one is asking for our dependent quantities. But it doesn't say like amount earned. We know x, we know y. But it doesn't give us just something that it says. So what we're going to have to actually do is go through each point and find out their ordered pair, right? So this first one would be 110. That would be this first dot here, right? And then 220. And from these different points, I can see that this is my x coordinate because x comes first, and then y. So if it's asking me about the dependent variables, I can go through each of my ordered pairs and look at which one is the y for every ordered pair. Okay? So I want you to go ahead and I want you to write out all the ordered pairs, find the dependent variables, answer the question, and then once you're done, you can hop on to MobyMax, and I will see you at my next station. Good job.